Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I'm here to chat with you a little bit more about this Virgo Full Moon, which is a total lunar eclipse on March 14th. That said, I'm focusing this chat entirely on one aspect of healing that this eclipse and full moon is offering us. And this is a huge topic. It's also a topic that I have, for my entire adult life, pretty much made a living talking about through critical media studies and intersectional feminism, which is what I have done in my other professional life, since astrology is now part of my professional life. And I really would love to chat with you a little bit about how this Virgo full moon is offering healing around body image. Okay, and it's a big topic. For the most part, when we see astrology talked about with the body, it's usually limited to kind of looking at rising signs and how the physical body should look. This is nothing like that. This is a much, much deeper work with the archetypes. Virgo is one of the archetypes that we can come into looking at body image, body shame, and healing with. There are others. I'm slowly working on a workbook that is specifically about evolutionary astrology for healing, kind of body image. And I look forward to putting that out hopefully later in 2025. But here, this is, literally this full moon, this eclipse. And because it's an eclipse, there's a powerful opening and window for healing. And it brings us into Virgo. So Virgo is an earth sign. All the earth signs are working with the body. They're working with different ways of accessing body conscious, different ways of coming into our relationship with our body. Virgo is an interesting earth sign and uniquely positioned because it rules the body-mind connection. And Virgo is also a sign that is here to bring, and it's kind of core archetype, it's here to bring divine love into the embodied plane, whether that is literally through our own body and our own body practices and our own relationship with our body, and or how we bring divine love into the way that we interact with the material world through the systems that we create in order to navigate and enter into that world. And Virgo kind of rules a lot of that. And so especially with this eclipse, there is an opportunity for healing. There is an opportunity for releasing shame attached to the ways that we have been in relationship with our body that have led us to hold shame, have led us to compare ourselves to the images that for the most part we receive from media. And the way that those images have come into us and influenced how we actually relate and love and or don't love our body. It's also, the Virgo-Pisces axis is also, part of the reason this is also here is that Pisces, especially when Pisces is contorted and distorted, can really go into kind of the collective narratives that something like Hollywood gives us. Okay, that can be part of how Pisces comes in. And it is especially when Pisces is in some of its lower vibrations and frequencies, which is where we kind of look for meaning about the collective from Hollywood, which is problematic because every single thing that emerges from Hollywood and media industries is driven by one thing, and that is profit. Okay, and so when we are talking about that being a source of information that is also coming through a lot of confusion, coming into our own relationship with body, we're talking about the way that media, through all the various ways that we enter into relationship with media, especially now in these current mediascapes, can influence our relationship with our body, have influenced societal and familial kind of understandings of what a particular body is supposed to look like, should look like. And this full moon is an opportunity to let go, literally to let go of all of that. It is an opportunity to heal and come into a new relationship with our body, with our embodied self, with the way that our mind and body connect through psyche, which is really how that connects. And psyche takes us into Pisces in a way that wants to bring healing. Virgo wants to heal. Virgo wants to bring a sacredness to the body. And so some of the ways that, the Virgo kind of, whether we use the words like shadow or lower vibrations and frequencies, or just the language that I use is fear-driven habits, fear-driven embodiments of the archetype. When Virgo is driven by fear, it clings. Right now, I just pictured when I was a little girl. Oh my gosh, we used to have like book fairs. I'm sure there's some folks that remember like book orders and book fairs, and like, oh my gosh, the day when you came in and on your desk there was a book, and it was super big for me because we didn't have a lot of money. So like if I got to order a book, oh my gosh. But anyway, one of those book fairs and book orders, I'm so sad that folks of newer generations didn't get to experience that. I got a poster, and it was this cat that said, "Hang on till Friday," and his claws were like gripped in this thing, and he's hanging there until Friday. And that grip of clinging, which came into my head, Virgo can grip like that. And the thing is, when Virgo's gripping like that, it's usually in an incredible state of anxiety. I mean, just doing that with my body, right? And there's nothing supporting me. I'm just gripped in, hanging on till Friday. And that type of grip is usually, it's driven by fear, it's driven by control. Those aren't things to hold shame for. When we're fearing, there's reasons for it, right? But when Virgo is in that gripping place, it's cut off from the flow of divine love. And it's cut off from the type of body-mind relationship and regulation of health and nurture and care that it wants to have. And so when we bring this into Virgo rules the body-mind connection. Virgo rules the way that we care for that relationship. It rules how we become aware of our body and treat it in a way that wants to support body-mind health and create patterns that are going to take us through our life. And so when this gets complicated with the toxic representations and toxic lessons around body and body image, we can shame ourselves, and we can start gripping into our own psyche like that. And this is where we can lean into activities that can bring about self-harm with our body, whether that is excessive dieting, whether that is excessive exercise. There is not enough social conversations about excessive exercise and how that can cause harm. Because usually when something is coming from like exercise in mainstream Western society, it gets praised, right? If the motivation behind it is one that is actually driven by fear, it can cause harm. It can cause harm psychologically, emotionally, and physically. And this can, of course, these complex body-mind relationships, these complex body-emotion relationships, they can show up in so many different ways. And what often happens for so many of us is that we can hold a lot of shame, and we can get into kind of self-destructive cycles that are really hard to break out of, because that fear is kind of what's driving the cycle. And when Virgo is driven by fear, it's cut off from Pisces, because Pisces is ultimately, especially when it is in its vibrancy of what it wants to manifest, which takes us so far out of anything pop culture and puts us into divine love and spirituality. It's fueled by love and compassion. And so this is an opportunity, especially if, like so many of us, you have journeyed with a complicated relation of body and self-love and embodiment and body image. This eclipse and where it's leading us is really an opportunity to release, okay, that south node in Virgo. I talked about this a lot in my other video, is inviting us to release. And here we can cultivate intentions around releasing any of that shame, any of that insecurity around our embodied being, around body image, around not showing up like whatever the media aligns with our identity and teaches us we should or shouldn't look like. This is an opportunity to firstly call bullshit on that. Recognize that all of those lessons, which often usually like they come from the media, they can also absolutely come from family, they can come from so many places. And all of it has been socially constructed. And all of it has been socially constructed to create profit. And when we're talking about the female body and the female identifying body, we're talking about a body that has absolutely been constructed under what we do call the male gaze. Now, what doesn't get talked about, the male gaze comes out of film theory. Laura Mulvey is the theorist that kind of came up with that in the 70s, and it has become part of pop culture. But what doesn't get talked about is the way that all of us tend to internalize that gaze, because it's the dominant gaze of Western society, and it still is. And so when we've internalized what is an inherently toxic, marginalizing view, and this, of course, gets complicated when we bring race and class and gender and we start piling up all the layers, okay? But when we've internalized any of that, it impacts our relationship with ourselves, and it impacts our relationship with our body, and we judge ourselves and we hold shame. And when Virgo is in that place of believing it's supposed to look like something else or manifest its embodied belonging, like one of those images that never had any origin in health, in wellness, actual wellness, and spiritual wellness, and the way that our body is a home to our spiritual being in this life. You know, Virgo can let go of all of that, because when it's clinging to it and it doesn't have that connection to Pisces as the spiritual flow into the soul's literal flow into the body, it can be really hard on itself. And so this full moon is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful time to set intentions of self-love, of loving the body exactly as it is right now, of taking up the space that we take up, of forgiving ourselves for being human in a very complicated journey, where everywhere we look like we live currently in a supposed wellness industry that benefits off of body shame. Like, this is when we pull the layers up through critical media lenses, we see how even those influencers and those celebrities who are, you know, it's very complicated. And it's not about blame. It's about recognizing the way that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of what is inherently, if we're talking about the female body, the male gaze being internalized and then profited off of by very few people and creating shame for millions and millions of people. And so this full moon, the archetypally, it's asking us to let go of the clinging. And in this lens, this is about our relationship with our body. And by letting go, the North Node is calling us into much more awakened embodiments of Pisces. And that is divine love and our spiritual path and compassion. And that then gets to stream in and it gets to come into our embodied place. And so this is where, you know, yes, Virgo is aligned with kind of health and habits and meditation and yoga and all of those mindful movement practices. But what's the intention behind them? And if the intention behind them is not, as ironic as it seems, to come into a place of stillness through movement, which is ultimately what the Virgo-Pisces axis allows us. And that's what kind of a mindful meditation movement, and that's why yoga, in its true cultural origins, is not about the body. It's about the body as a vessel for transcendence and belonging. It's that stillness through movement, and that is when we're connected to all that is. And so how can that be an intention? And that stillness, that connection, that is healing. That is divine love. That is Piscean love coming into the body. And when that then fills our heart and our body and our mind and our gut, that then allows us to approach the body from a totally different place. And this is, of course, complicated when we're journeying with chronic pain and chronic illness, which brings us into a very particular relationship with our body when we are living disabled lives. And yet, again, if we cast off the gaze outward, that would tell us we're supposed to look a certain way, or we're supposed to function a certain way, or our energy is supposed to be a certain way. And we come back into our embodiments and our spiritual path. That spiritual path replaces all the external voices, which are usually quite shaming. And that spiritual path connects us to something that literally transcends it. Pisces is part of the archetypes of transcendence. But Virgo is in this plane. Virgo's in this body. Virgo's in this experience. And there are other archetypes that really kind of can pull us into this. One of them is Ceres, who's the Earth Mother, who is all about divine love in a nourishing way that connects us in our human journey to the Earth and the Earth Mother's wisdom. And where is Ceres right now in the sky? She's in Pisces. She's part of the Pisces parade. And so, again, there is this divine Earth Mother wisdom in Pisces, in divine love. That's also opposite Virgo. That's also talking, she's earlier in the Pisces. She's not part of that stellium of the sun and the North Node and Neptune, but she's there. And she's bringing that wisdom, and she offers so much healing. And yet Ceres, and where we have Ceres in our natal chart, is another layer of embodiment in healing and what can turn to nurture, especially if we've been taught to restrict our relationship with our body. But Ceres, Ceres is wonderful because, yes, she's divine love and she has got a backbone. Ceres cannot be taken advantage of. She rages when her daughter is taken, Persephone, into the underworld. She is the mama bear as well. And so it's really important when we talk about the mothering archetype, because, of course, in the West and gender and all of that, the mothering archetype usually only gets talked about in terms of just pouring love out onto others. And while that is part of what Ceres can do, she is the ultimate mothering principle in a way that is different and kind of oversee the moon. She also knows about limits. She knows about boundaries. She knows about hard work. She knows about cycles. She knows that life is not about immediacy and is about cycles and growth and wisdom. And so Ceres is also she's part of healing for our relationship with our body, what it means to nurture our body in so many different layers, from food to practice to love to nurture to rest. And she's in Pisces, which is also bringing in that divine love. And so wherever you are on your journey of your own relationship to your body, another layer is that Uranus is in Taurus, radical awakening of embodiment, trining this moon. And sextiling the sun during this full moon. So when we're looking at it through this lens of healing, Uranus is radical and it's supportive. It's, but all the more reason why this is an eclipse in which we can awaken to really loving ourselves, really loving our bodies and that they are part of our home in this life. And especially if we live in a body that has survived violence, that continues to survive violence. And there's so many different ways of defining violence. I really do like, if folks know the book Love and Rage, Lama Rod Owens, he's a queer Black author and Tibetan Buddhist teacher in the States. And he talks about all the different versions of violence: emotional, physical, sexual, psychological, spiritual. And so often when we use that word, we're just kind of thinking about a limited understanding, but violence can happen in so many ways. And so, of course, our own relationship with our body is absolutely bears, some of those stories. And yet, this healing is about us. It's about our path, not what we've survived, not what we continue to survive, not what toxic media or oppressive histories would say or teach. It's about us in our own embodied relationship, healing, releasing shame that most likely was never ours to carry. But bye-bye, see you later. Don't need that. When doing a ritual like this, it is wonderful, to kind of, whether it's going to the woods or sitting by a tree or by water, whatever nature calls to you, and, kind of asking if the earth is willing to compost some of that shame that we might have been carrying, and then having a ritual and burying it in the dirt or whatever it is, and allowing that to be composted, because we just don't need to take it. We're going other places, and divine love is fueling us. And then when divine love is fueling us, we're in a relationship with love, the goddess, divine mystery. And that relationship is part of our relationship and how we're manifesting in our own body in Virgo in this life, and how we're bringing care and attention to our own life, to others, to the tasks at hand. Virgo wants to be in the present moment. And when there's too much fear and control, that's what anxiety is. It takes us out of the present moment. And Virgo just wants to be in the present moment with full awareness and attention and love that's coming from Pisces. So hopefully there is something in this talk that speaks to you, a nugget you can take with you. These are complicated journeys, being embodied beings. There are so many layers to them, and yet this is an incredible moment for healing and reclaiming and releasing. Reclaiming comes when we release the stories that have been put on us, the stories that we inherit from so many places in our own lives, intergenerational, society, history, future projections. We release, we restory, and we take with us what is going to nourish us. And that nourishment is going to translate into our relationship with our body and how we see ourselves, and how we do not need to see ourselves through lenses of shame. It's not ours to carry. And it's stopping us from going where we're being called. It's slowing us down like a little bit of a ball and chain. And so we cut it and we let it go. And that might shift things. Venus is retrograde. Venus is shifting our values. I mean, she's a whole other layer that, of course, comes into self-love. And she's in Aries right now. She's in Aries for this eclipse. And Aries is another layer of the body. It's the body through fire and spirit. It's the body that just wants to be able to carry out spirit's tasks. And Aries absolutely does not have time for what someone else tells me about my body. And when Aries is pulled down by that, Aries is going to get all sorts of it's not going to be able to function as Aries wants to function. And Venus is relearning her values in Aries about your spirit, about your primal desire. And in Aries, that has nothing to do with what others are telling us how we should or shouldn't look, let alone how we should or shouldn't live our life. So that's another layer that's here supporting. And I will stop because I'll just keep going on in the layers and layers, because the layers never stop, and it's part of why I love astrology. So lots of love, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.